Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Year 4 Maths this morning. Hope you are safe and well. We're going to start this morning with our usual 4 questions. This morning we don't have triangles and squares on them. However, there are 2 triangle questions and 2 square questions. What I want you to do when you're working out this morning is have a look and see which one you think you could do in your head and which ones you think you need to use a written method for. You've got 5 minutes as usual, or as close to 5 minutes as you possibly can. Please press pause while you're working and press play when you are ready to carry on. Okay, press pause now. Okay, the first question we're going to look at this morning is 3 times 80. This again is using and applying a known multiplication fact. Remember what I've said, that to begin with, the first job is to cover the magic 0. Okay, so put your finger over the 0 on the 80, and that leaves you with 3/8. 3/8 we know are 24, so if you release the magic 0, it will jump to the end of the number 24, and it becomes 240. So 3 times 80 is 240. That one would be, or you would use mental strategies for solving that one rather than pencil and paper. Okay, the second question we're going to look at is 643 plus 643. Now, this one you could use pencil and paper for. However, I'm going to try and argue that you could be using mental strategies for this as well. The first thing to look at, first thing to notice, is that it's the same number. So you're almost doubling the number there. So the first method I'm going to use is I'm going to use a doubling strategy. So I'm going to say double 600 is 1200 or 1200. Double 40 is 80. Double 3 is 6. And then if I recombine the digits, I end up with 1286. So it could have been a mental strategy question. However, some of you will probably prefer to have reverted to pencil and paper, which is totally fine as well. And you would have used, or the most efficient method you could have used would have been column addition, abstract. So 3 plus 3 is 6, 4 plus 4 is 8, and 6 plus 6 is 12. Either way, you get the same number. It's just that this method here would, as you get quicker at it, will probably be more efficient than having to write everything out on pencil and paper. The next question would be definitely a mental strategy question. So you've got 74 plus 70. Now it could have been a place value question. So the first method we're going to look at is place value. The only digit that is going to change here is the tens column, the tens digit here. So 74 plus 70. Okay. We could count on from 74, and we'd add on 70. So we would say 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. So our answer there would be 144. Or we could use doubling. Okay, it's doubling, and it's what we call near doubling a near number, a near double. Okay, so here we've got 74 and 70. Well, if we double 70, we get 140, and then we just simply add the 4 on afterwards in the 74 there. So double 70, 140, and then add 4 will give you 144. Either way, it's quite useful. This method is probably the most efficient method, but it's recognizing that it's a near double. Okay, the next one, or the final question, 312 divided by 8. This one is probably pencil and paper. Okay, it's the only one really this morning that you definitely need a pencil and paper with. So the first method we'll use is bus stop, short division. So we would set up our 312 divided by 8 and wrap the bus stop around the 312. 8s into 3 can't do, so it becomes 8s into 31 is 3 with 7 remainder, and then it becomes 8s into 72 is 9, and we know that because 9 8s are 72. So our answer will be 39. Okay, second method, we could use partition and chunking. So I would take chunks of 80 out of this number because, again, it's a nice round figure, and I know that 80 divided by 8 is 10 because 10 eighths are 80. So I would say 80 divided by 8 is 10, 80 divided by 8 is 10, 80 divided by 8 is 10, and then I've got 72 left. So I would say 72 divided by 8 is 9. And if I add the numbers together, so I've got 10, 20, 30, and 9 is 39, this will be my answer. I'll recombine it. And you can see it matches the answer on the bus stop over there. You could have been more efficient if you wanted to. You could have said, you could have done 30 lots of 80. Sorry, 3 lots of 80 would have been 240. And then you could have done the last part if you wanted to make it more efficient, but that would be your choice. Okay, the learning intention for this morning is to be able to convert units of volume. Okay, so we've got measure, volume, milliliters, convert, liters, and then at the top there I've just put the shortened, the abbreviated things that we might use for liters and milliliters. So ml would stand for milliliters, and I've put LTRS, but you could just have L if you wanted to as a shortened form of liters. Okay, our question this morning, our in focus question this morning, you can see that we have 2 pints of milk up here, and that 2 pints of milk will equal 1,136 milliliters. Okay, our children here have all made statements. This young lady has said, well, 1,136 milliliters is about 1 litre. This young lady said, well, no, actually, I think it's about 2 litres. And then we've got this chap here as being a bit more detailed. I think it's about 1.1 litres. And this young lady is, it's about 1.2 litres. Now, the question we're asking here, who is correct? Can you justify your answer? Okay. Now, we are going to return to this during the plenary later and during the course of the lesson. But I just want you to stop, pause the video, and just have a little think about that. Okay, who is right, who is wrong? Is it that some people are more right than others? Is it that some people are completely wrong? Is it that some people are definitely right? I don't know. There is some ambiguity here, and that's why I want to return to it later on. So just think about what you are being asked, and then press play when you're ready to carry on. Okay, welcome back. Well, this question is all about being able to round numbers effectively, okay? And we're going to talk through during the course of the lesson this morning about if we rounded this number to the nearest, say, litre, to the nearest 100 milliliters, what is going to be our best answer for that? So we're going to look at it through the lesson, and then we'll come back to it during the plenary and get you to make your decision on what you think is the correct answer and which one you think would be, and which one you think is right and why. Okay, first thing we're going to look at this morning is if we took 1,136 milliliters and we wanted to round it to the nearest litre, the big question is, what do we do? Now, if we make links back to our previous learning and think really hard about how we've rounded numbers, if we're going to round it to the nearest litre, okay, then we've got to be thinking to ourselves, okay, the thing to remember is that a litre is 1,000 milliliters, okay? So we're effectively going to be rounding it to the nearest 1,000 milliliters. Now, if we write our number line out to prove our answer, excuse me, we know that 1,136 will be somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 milliliters. And if we were to add it to our number line, okay, then it would be somewhere in between 1,100 milliliters and 1,200 milliliters. So it's going to be about here on the number line. Now this proves, as long as we put it in the right place, that 1,136 is closer to 1,000 than it is to 2,000. You can visually see that, okay? Now, the important thing is to remember that if we were not using a number line and we were looking at the number itself, what would we need to remember when we rounded? Okay, well, the important thing to remember is that we'd be looking at, if we're rounding it to the nearest thousand, we would look at the 100 figure there. And remember what I said, if it's 4 or less, then we round it down. If it's 5 or more, we would round it up. In this case, it's 1, so it is 4 or less, so we would round it down. Now, the young man at the top here is making a statement. He says, we can also say that 1,136 milliliters is 1 litre to the nearest litre. So we know it was 1,000 milliliters to the nearest 1,000 milliliters. But because we know that 1,000 milliliters is a litre, we can also say that this is 1 litre to the nearest litre. Now, if you think back to what the girl said in the initial question, the in focus question, this young lady said it's about 1 litre. 1,136 is about 1 litre. This young lady said it's about 2 litres. Okay, so we would be thinking really that it is this young lady's statement is more correct than this one. Okay, it is about 1 litre. It is closer to 1 litre than it is to 2 litres. We have proved that. Okay, the next thing we're going to think about is what 1,136 millilitres to the nearest 100 millilitres will be. Okay, to the nearest 100 millilitres. So we've looked at it to the nearest litre, or the nearest 1,000 millilitres. We're now going to look at it to the nearest 100 millilitre. Now, 1,136 millilitres, okay, is going to be 1 whole litre, so 1,000 millilitres, and also there's going to be 100 millilitres, okay, so it's going to be 1 whole litre, and then we've got 0.1 or 100 millilitres, okay, so we know that it is going to be somewhere between the 100 millilitres and 200 millilitres. It's going to be somewhere in between, okay, and if we were to write that on the number line there, we've got 1,100 and 1,200. So we know that if we're going to round it to the nearest 100 millilitres, it's going to be somewhere between these two numbers. And on the number line, if we were to put 1,136, it would be somewhere about here. So is it closer to 1,000 millilitres or is it closer to 1,200 millilitres? Well, we can see quite clearly here it is closer to 1,100 millilitres. So if we round this to the nearest 100 millilitres, it would be 1,100 millilitres or 1.1 litres. And again, if we were thinking of doing it without the number line, if we're feeling really confident, if we were going to round it to the nearest 100 millilitres, then we would look in the tens column here. 4 or less, we round it down. 5 or more, we would round it up. It's a 3, so we would round it down. So who was more accurate? With the chap on the left said, well, 1,136 millilitres is about 1.1 litres, whereas the young lady said it's about 1.2 litres. Who would you agree with, and why would you think that? Press pause, have a little think, and then press play when you're ready to carry on. Okay, so for me personally, I'd be looking at this and thinking, you know, we've proved that if we look back, that we know it is closer to 1.1 litres. So for me, I'd be saying this young man is more correct. Okay, it's closer to 1.1 litres than it is to 1.2 litres. The final thing I want to think about this morning is if I had 1.136 litres or 1,136 millilitres, and I wanted to round it to the nearest 500 millilitres, what would I need to do? Well, the first thing, the important thing to think about is that 1.5 litres is the same as 1,500 millilitres, because we have 1 whole litre is 1,000 millilitres. And then we've got another 500 millilitres, which is half a litre. So you can see on the graphic here, we've got 1.5 litres, 1.5 litres. And then we need to remember 1,136 millilitres is greater than 1,000 millilitres, but less than 1,500 millilitres. So we know that rounding it to the nearest 500 millilitres will mean it will be somewhere between 1,000 millilitres and 1,500 millilitres. It's going to be somewhere in this zone here. We know it's greater than 1,000, but it's less greater than 1,000, but it's less than 1,500. So it's going to be in this zone here. And if we were thinking back to our number line, then we'd have at one end, we'd put 1,000, and then we'd have 1,500, and then we'd have 2,000. But if we were going to round it to the nearest 500, it's going to be either 1,000 or it's going to be 1,500. The big question is which one. And if we plot the number 1,136 onto the number line, then we can see quite clearly that we would round it down. It's closer to 1,000 than it is to 1,500. The last question I have on here, though, is how would we round this without using a number line? How would we find or round this without using a number line? Well, the question here is really, if we're thinking about that, would be, again, looking at the hundreds column, okay? If it's 4 or less, we're going to round it down. So therefore, rounded to the nearest 1,000, it's going to be 1,000. Okay, so now it's your turn. I've got a few questions for you to look at here. And the first 2 bottles here, what we want you to do is to find me the volume of each bottle of smoothie in milliliters. So remember, there are 1,000 milliliters in a litre. Okay, so 1.4 litres will be the same as 1 litre and 400 milliliters, or 1,400 milliliters. Just remember that. That will help. Press pause when you are done and press play when you're ready to see the answers. Okay, the first bottle here has 0.5 litres of liquid. What will that be in milliliters? Well, we'd have 500 milliliters because it is half a litre. If 1 litre is 1,000 milliliters, half a litre will be 500 milliliters. And then we also have, on the other side here, 1.8 litres. Now, 1.8 litres is the same as 1,800 milliliters. Okay, this question is quite interesting, actually, and it made me think as well. One bottle holds 1.3 litres of acid. The other bottle holds 1 litre and 30 litres of acid. And the question is it possible to tell which bottle is which? So in a minute, I'm going to ask you to pause the tape, the video. What I'm going to ask you to do is to think about this. Why do the bottles have the same level of liquid? Press pause while you think and press play when you're ready to hear me think about it and talk about what I think. Okay, welcome back. Now, my initial thought about this was, no, you can't tell. And no, not just straight by looking. And then I thought really carefully and really hard about what the question was asking me. And then I looked at the size of the bottles because I thought to myself, well, they're different sized bottles, and yet they've still got the same level of liquid in them. Now, does that mean they've got the same amount of liquid, or does it not? And then I got 2 bottles out. I got a bigger bottle and I got a smaller bottle. Okay, and I took the same amount of liquid and I poured it into the 2 bottles. And I could see quite clearly that the larger bottle had a lower liquid level, while the smaller bottle had a higher liquid level. And then I made the sort of thought, I thought to myself, well, that must mean that the smaller bottle would fill more quickly. And the larger the capacity of the bottle, so the bigger the bottle, the more liquid it would take to fill it, and the more time it would take to fill it. So I looked at these two here, and I thought to myself, right, this one has to be 1.3 litres, while this one, or 1,300 millilitres, while this one has to be 1 litre and 30 millilitres, or 1,030. And purely the reason being that this one is a smaller bottle. So although it looks like they've got the same amount of liquid in them, they don't. It's just that this is a smaller bottle. It fills more quickly with less liquid. This one takes more liquid to fill it. So for them to have the same amount of liquid in them, this one with more liquid has to be a significantly bigger bottle. Okay, our independent learning today, please complete worksheet 6 on pages 75 and 76 of the workbook. Press pause while you're working and press play when you're ready to move on to the plenary. Okay, so for the last part of the lesson this morning, I want you to think back to this question from earlier. So, who do you think is correct? And now that we've done the lesson, or we've worked through the lesson and the learning this morning, have you changed your mind after this morning's lesson? Who do you think was more correct? Or who do you think was correct? And who do you think was incorrect? Is there more than one person who might be correct? I'm going to leave you with that question this morning and have a little think. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.